what degree of certainty do you believe Brett Kavanaugh assaulted you?
100%.
I'm not questioning that Dr. Ford may have been sexually assaulted by some person in some place at some time. But I have never done this to her or to anyone.
On this Thursday night, she said, he said, testimony that divides two people, two political parties, and an entire nation. Christine Blasey Ford and Brett Kavanaugh tell their stories as a conservative and lifetime Supreme Court seat hangs in the balance.
We'll look at what they said, how it was received inside and outside the room, and why Republican senators left their questions to a female prosecutor. An edge of the seat mix of memory, politics, and culture. This is The National.
It was emotional, dramatic, and at times extremely political. A U.S. Supreme Court confirmation hearing that felt more like a trial for both Brett Kavanaugh and the woman accusing him of sexual assault. Paul Hunter walks us through what was an explosive day in Washington.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give before...
There she was, Christine Blasey Ford, set to go.
So help you God.
I do.
And then, separately, Brett Kavanaugh, both swearing to tell the truth, each with an utterly different story.
When I got to the small gathering,
First, it was Ford's harrowing tale of sexual assault at a high school gathering 36 years ago.
I was pushed onto the bed, and Brett got on top of me.
Locked in a bedroom, she described Kavanaugh as visibly drunk, groping her, pulling at her clothes.
I believed he was going to rape me. I tried to yell for help. When I did, Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling.
It was, she said, terrifying.
And I thought that Brett was accidentally going to kill me.
Kavanaugh and a friend with him were laughing, as she put it, uproariously. She escaped, but it's haunted her ever since.
So what you are telling us is this could not be a case of mistaken identity?
Absolutely not.
Ford underlined she's coming forward now for one reason only: civic duty.
So that those considering his nomination would know about this assault.
But if Ford was measured, come his turn, Kavanaugh seemed enraged.
This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. The consequences will be with us for decades. This confirmation process has become a national disgrace. You have replaced advice and consent with search and destroy.
He called the allegations crazy town, last-minute smears, a left-wing conspiracy, denying every accusation. At times, choking up, here noting his young daughter praise for Christine Ford.
We mean no ill will.
Still, Kavanaugh's fury was evident, condemning the process, blaming Democrats for a calculated political hit, and emphasizing,
I will not be intimidated into withdrawing from this process. You've tried hard.
Likewise, Democrats were undeterred, pressing Kavanaugh on aspects he seemed uncomfortable with. Not least, is he now open to a deeper investigation?
I welcome whatever the committee wants to do, because I'm telling the truth.
I want to know what you want to do.
I'm telling the truth.
I want to know what you want to do, Judge.
I'm innocent. I'm innocent of this charge.
Then you're prepared for an FBI investigation?
They don't reach conclusions. You reach the conclusions,
No,
Senator.
but they do investigate questions.
I'm innocent.
And you can't have it both ways, Judge. You can't say here at the beginning,
I wanted a
passion
hearing.
moment,
Look,
I welcome any kind of investigation.
This thing was
then
sprung
walk
on
away
me.
from this.
This thing was sprung at the last minute.
And so it went, with Kavanaugh always returning to one main point.
But I swear today, under oath, before the Senate and the nation, before my family and God, I am innocent of this charge.
Having heard all of that, the question for U.S. senators now: is Brett Kavanaugh worthy of sitting on the Supreme Court for the rest of his life? Is there any reason to think he may be unfit for the job? Do you believe him or her?
Okay, Paul, the president's been pretty vocal about this all week, saying even yesterday he was going to watch and see how it played out. What is he saying tonight?
Well, Rosie, recall last night Donald Trump suggested that while he still backed Kavanaugh, his mind could change on that depending on today's testimony. Well, no sooner did it end today than he tweeted, quote, "Kavanaugh showed exactly why I nominated him. His testimony was powerful, honest, and riveting." Trump then labeled Democrats disgraceful and the process a sham. Rosie.
Paul Hunter in Washington tonight. Thanks, Paul. As Paul said, Kavanaugh's self-defense was fierce. It certainly motivated his supporters, both inside the courtroom and out, or the committee hearing room. While Ford's energy was decidedly calmer, it was no less powerful. So let's hear some more of what she had to say today.
Brett's assault on me drastically altered my life. For a very long time, I was too afraid and ashamed to tell anyone these details. I did not want to tell my parents that I, at age 15, was in a house without any parents present, drinking beer with boys. Once he was selected and it seemed like he was popular and that it was a sure vote, I was calculating daily the risk benefit for me of coming forward and that I would just be personally annihilated.
What is the strongest memory you cannot forget?
The uproarious laughter between the two, and they're having fun at my expense. I was, underneath one of them while the two laughed. Two friends having a really good time with one another.
There wasn't just high emotion inside that room today. Demonstrators on both sides, they turned out in big numbers. We'll see some of those backing Judge Kavanaugh a little bit later. But for now, here's a look at some of those who stood behind Ford.
We're gonna let misogyny turn me around. We're gonna keep on walking.
Some peacefully sang to show their solidarity. Others struck a more forceful tone. These demonstrators made no bones about what they wanted to see.
Because we will do everything that we can to keep Brett Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court.
We believe Anita Hill! We believe Anita Hill!
One large group of protesters even tried to block the street across from the Supreme Court until police moved in and made dozens of arrests. In New York, a group of women did more than speak up for Blasey Ford. They screamed at the top of their lungs. The CBC's Stephen D'Souza tells us why.
We believe Christine! We believe survivors! We hope you can hear us!
As the hearing broke for lunch, the emotion these women felt watching Christine Blasey Ford testify erupted. Their rage was prompted by this.
Brett put his hand over my mouth to stop me from yelling.
I think when we were all together here, it seemed to make sense to scream on her behalf.
It felt like she was on trial as the victim, which is really painful to watch. When she talks about small details like remembering their laughter, that's the kind of thing that rings true. And I think it probably affects more women than a lot of people are aware of.
Bringing that personal struggle to a very public stage is why some call this a defining moment for America.
The important thing is that there is public outrage, that there is a political, larger political movement and reckoning that this is not okay, that this is not acceptable.
Still, some worry Kavanaugh's nomination will go ahead regardless of what was said today.
It kind of destroys me. It takes away a lot of my faith in our system.
We believe Christine. We believe survivors. We hope you can hear us.
A message they fear that some in the Senate won't even consider. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
Now, we've heard many times over the past year and more how difficult it is for women to come forward with these allegations of past sexual assault. Did today's landmark hearing open up any kind of space there for others to now take that leap of faith? Ioana Remiliotis asked someone who's been through something like this in Canada.
I'm not sure.
Before Me Too, the stories were lonelier. As one of Jian Gomeshi's accusers, Linda Redgrave's testimony against the former radio star was shredded in court, her story deemed not credible. Watching this brings it all back.
It's so hard to be up there in front of the public and trying to tell your story and have them dissecting it piece by piece. It's hard.
The Gomeshi trial began Canada's public reckoning with sexual violence, and the women at the center of it became beacons for other victims. But for every new hashtag, Redgrave says, there are still the same old questions that cast doubt.
People are now starting to understand that there isn't a certain science to the way people respond and react to trauma or to sexual violence. I think we've come a long way in the last couple of years, and I'm really happy for that, but I'm really sad that there's so many people that have had to suffer publicly because of it.
Brenda, how old were you at the time?
I was in the 2nd grade.
And still, more women are speaking out. A political show got an unexpected call, prompted by today's testimony.
And I thought I was over this.
A 76-year-old woman sharing the story of her assault when she was in grade school. And on social media, celebrities broke their silence.
Our mission is to investigate every case.
Police in Toronto believe the Me Too movement is a big factor behind a 16% spike in reports of sexual assault in the last year. But while the floodgates open at hotlines too, crisis centers like this one admit they don't have the funding to keep up.
They might call us and ask for support, and we have to tell them that there's a 2-year wait list because we don't have enough funding for our counseling services. So I think it begs the question of what are we asking survivors to come into?
It can be avoided. Redgrave got through it by creating her own support group for survivors, and she sees today as a win.
So where's the victory? The victory is in her being brave enough to come forward and speak out against somebody.
Whatever the outcome. Joanna Rumeliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
We should make it clear that Brett Kavanaugh has his own legions of supporters, and in fact, many are women. Some of them voiced that support today.
What we're seeing here, unfortunately, is a pattern of Democrats pushing forward allegations that, as soon as you press on them, start to fall apart. They don't actually care about what happened 35 years ago. They care about what he's going to do for the next 30 years.
We have leaders who are willing to turn upside down a sacred and bedrock principle of the presumption of innocence for whatever motives. That is dangerous. And as women, as moms, as wives, as sisters, as daughters, we should be very concerned and demand nothing but fairness.
We heard a little bit from the nominee in Paul's piece there, but Brett Kavanaugh lashed out at the way these allegations have been treated, and he got some fiery support from a political veteran. Take a listen.
This grotesque and coordinated character assassination will dissuade competent and good people of all political persuasions from serving our country. Yes, we went to parties, though. Yes, of course, we went to parties, and the yearbook page describes that and kind of makes fun of it. And as a, you know, if we want to sit here and talk about whether a Supreme Court nomination should be based on a high school yearbook page, I think that's taken us to a new level of absurdity.
This is the most unethical sham since I've been in politics. And if you really wanted to know the truth, you sure as hell wouldn't have done what you've done to this guy. Are you a gang rapist?
No.
I cannot imagine what you and your family have gone through. Boy, y'all want power. God, I hope you never get it.
David Frum joins me now from Washington. David, was today a fair exercise, a useful one?
It's certainly not. It's certainly, I mean, the people who had power over this hearing certainly are not here to get to the bottom of what happened. They're here to not seem to squelch Dr. Ford the way many people feel Anita Hill was squelched, while pushing this thing through. So in that sense, it's designed to simulate a fair process, but not be a fair process. One thing I think we need to caution all of ourselves, and this is something I try to keep a check on, we all think that we are good judges of whether other people are telling the truth or lying, but the truth is we project ourselves into other people. And when we look at the worst kind of evidence is this kind of witness testimony, because what we hear, we think we're hearing someone else, we're really looking into a mirror and seeing ourselves.
So one of the things that struck me and many of the other people watching the testimony was when he talked about the fact that he was a victim of the Clintons because of his involvement in the Ken Starr report. Here's part of his opening statement where he talked about that.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit, fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars in money from outside left-wing opposition groups.
So what does that tell us about him and whether he is, given that rather partisan comment, whether he's even actually suited for this job?
Well, it is true he is one of the, we've had partisan Supreme Court justices before, let's not have illusions about that. But what was striking about his opening statement was how much it was for the Fox News audience. I don't think non-conservatives know what the word borking means or attach a lot of significance to it as a reference to the hearings of Robert Bork. It was very much a statement from the heart of the conservative world, speaking to a conservative audience. Just as Donald Trump is trying to be president only for part of America, Brett Kavanaugh, in his trouble, is speaking to part of America to support him to get himself onto the Supreme Court.
So watching that from here, it was all, it was all astounding. I know everyone was grouped in the United States watching it as well, but what should we as Canadians take from the fact that this is playing out there in the way that it is?
Well, it certainly makes you think that the American system of nominating and approving judges is one not to be emulated, because what you would want ideally to do is have these kinds of allegations heard in private, because this is a complicated matter, and if Brett Kavanaugh is right, I mean, his reputation will never recover from these things aired in public. It should have been screened by the FBI in private, and that private fact-fighting should have been all settled long before this hearing took place. The way that this is being battled is one that can, if he is confirmed, will leave many people feeling the Supreme Court contains a person guilty of sexual assault. If he's defeated, which looks less likely now, it will continue to politicize the Supreme Court.
So you say it's less likely he'll be turned down now. Why do you say that?
Well, look, the Republicans have the votes. It's always been more probable than not that he would get confirmed because they have the party discipline. But the thing that will change this is if overnight the Republicans see a lot of polls that say a lot more Republican Senate seats are in trouble than were in trouble 3 days ago, that may change minds.
How much of this is about the midterms and the political climate we're in?
A lot of it is about the midterms, but I think some Republicans are saying, we're willing to trade Senate seats for the Supreme Court seat. It is the 5th seat, the one that locks in a court that had a kind of 4-4 division with one floating judge, Brett Kavanaugh's predecessor, Justice Anthony Kennedy. His nomination, Kavanaugh's nomination, locks in an enduring 5-4 conservative majority.
David Frum, thank you for your time tonight. We'll be speaking with you again soon. The Senate committee is scheduled to vote on this tomorrow, and if they approve Judge Kavanaugh's nomination, they will then move it to a vote of the full Senate, probably Saturday.
Now, it bears mentioning, as the Ford Kavanaugh hearing was playing out, Donald Trump was supposed to meet with his Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, and there was some speculation he might be fired, but that meeting was put off.
Are you still planning to meet with the president today, Mr. Rosenstein?
The White House says both sides agreed to meet next week to avoid interfering with today's hearing in the Senate. At issue, a New York Times report that Rosenstein had suggested secretly recording Trump and discussed ways to remove him from office. There was word Rosenstein might resign, but Trump seemed to suggest yesterday he'd like to keep him in his post.
Adopté.
Here in Canada, the House of Commons voted unanimously to strip Myanmar's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, of her honorary Canadian citizenship. There'd been growing pressure to do so in the wake of the Rohingya crisis, something this country and much of the international community has characterized as genocide. The move does still require a green light from the Senate.
I'm calling on Brian Gallant to do the honorable thing and recognize that he lost the election. He does not have a mandate to govern.
And another day and more political drama in New Brunswick as PC party leader Blaine Higgs calls on the Liberal leader to resign. Neither party won enough seats in Monday's election for a majority, but while the PCs actually came out ahead, the Liberals hope an alliance with the Greens will keep them in power. Higgs wants the legislature called back, though, and a confidence vote held, which, depending how it goes, could put the PCs in a position to govern. And still ahead tonight on The National, critics call his views anti-Muslim, but Tommy Robinson is known by supporters as a self-styled free speech activist. We're going to take you to a London courthouse with both groups present.
And there's still lots of uncertainty after a tight election in New Brunswick. Could we see that same story play out in Quebec next week? Adishu is here to talk about that and more.
And Trump says he doesn't like Chrystia Freeland, why that might play a big part in the ongoing NAFTA negotiations.
The Americans are finding that the negotiations are tough because Canadians are tough negotiators, as we should be.
You've probably heard about Donald Trump's harsh comments about Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland. Tonight, Trump's envoy to Canada is dialing that back, doing a bit of damage control. U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Kelly Craft, is calling Freeland smart, articulate, and in fact, her comments cap a whole day of support for Freeland from the Prime Minister, her cabinet colleagues, and a veteran trade negotiator. Here's Katie Simpson.
If the Prime Minister is bothered by Donald Trump's insults, he's not letting it show.
The Americans are finding that the negotiations are tough because Canadians are tough negotiators, as we should be.
And members of cabinet fiercely defended the woman leading Canada's NAFTA negotiating team.
I think Minister Freeland is a great foreign minister.
Minister Freeland is doing an outstanding job at a very difficult task on behalf of all Canadians, and I think all Canadians ought to be very grateful.
There were no kind words from Donald Trump yesterday when he lashed out at Chrystia Freeland without using her name.
We're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much.
It is no secret there is tension in the NAFTA negotiating room, where big personalities compete and at times can clash. The question is whether some of that animosity is self-inflicted.
Competence and honesty among elected leaders and in our public service matter.
The U.S. noticed when Freeland criticized Trump without using his name at an awards reception in Washington this summer, and she participated in a panel discussion in Toronto called Taking on the Tyrant, where a video compared Trump's leadership to the regimes of Russia and China. This former Canadian trade negotiator says Trump appears to be overreacting.
If he allows that kind of petty issue to nag him, then he is telling us more about himself than perhaps he should.
Trump's personal temperament may also be a factor in the overall tensions, according to this labor leader.
The president seems to have difficulty with women, so a strong, deeply principled, smart woman like Minister Freeland, I could see would cause him problems.
Whether they like each other or not, Freeland is going to have to sit down with U.S. negotiators at some point when high-level talks resume. But right now, there are no concrete plans for another round of face-to-face meetings. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead on the national. First, we saw a minority government in BC. Now this week in New Brunswick. Voters across Canada seem to be sending some sort of message. But is the federal government listening? The At Issue panel is here to break that all down.
Plus, all eyes were on the Kavanaugh hearing today. How the world seemed to stop and watch is our moment of the day.
I think the world is watching. Our kids are watching, girls and boys.
I believe.
Our caucus has given me the mandate to ask our officials to reach out to hopefully start discussions with the Green Party to see if there could be some type of agreement where we would be able to ensure we maintain the confidence of the House. It's evident that he's desperate to hold on to power, and he's trying to buy time with hopes that he can convince one of my MLAs to cross the floor.
New Brunswick is in a political deadlock, words you thought you'd never hear me say. It's now days after the election results. Liberal leader, the Premier still, Brian Gallant, wants the first crack at forming government as he gets. He's now turning to the Green Party for help, but the Progressive Conservative leader, who you saw there, Blaine Higgs, isn't going down without a fight. All of this just days before another big election in this country, in Quebec. Could it be the same kind of outcome there? And how is Ottawa reading these results? At Issue is here to dig into all of that and more. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal. Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Althea Raj is here in Ottawa. Now, it's not often we do at issue about provincial politics, but there's some interesting things happening here. I think that we can look at writ large, writ federally. So let's start with what's happened in New Brunswick, and I'll put this one to you, Andrew. How do you think we should read these results? We know that the Liberals are going to try and hold on to power, even Brian Gallant saying maybe until Christmas. But what does that tell us about the way first past the post is working in this country, or at least in New Brunswick right now?
Well, it's a deja vu, isn't it? This looks a lot like the BC election last year. And there's some commonalities. One is that we're starting to see more parties in the political landscape. We don't have two-party politics anymore in a lot of the provinces, haven't had it at the federal level for 100 years. And first past the post is really suited to that. You get very clear results when there's a two-party system. But when you get 3 and 4 and 5, it starts to get really complicated. The vote splits get very strange. And you can get these kinds of results where, not always, of course, but where you have two parties with almost the same standing and this kind of showdown that comes afterwards. I think what's also interesting to point out is what's not happening. And you saw this in BC as well, which is not... You don't see the parties simply capitulating to one another. You don't see the larger parties simply giving the small parties whatever they want. And this is relevant because when people start talking about proportional representation as the alternative to it, they say, well, this is the scenario you'll get with these large parties and small parties, and the large parties will just give in to the extremist fringe parties. And the reason you're not seeing that happen here, as you don't typically, is they're all going to have to face election again. And if the large party is seen to have sold out to an extremist party, or if the small party is seen to have sold out to the large party, they're going to pay a price either with their supporters or with the electorate at large. So there's going to be a lot of negotiating, and everybody's going to have to put water in their wine.
And so, Chantal, you wrote about this possibly playing out in Quebec because the election there is Monday. Things are very, very tight between the CAQ and the Liberals. And then people are starting to look at other parties that maybe they wouldn't have looked at in the past because they fear, they realize that a referendum is no longer in the offing. As you're talking, I'm going to put up our poll tracker so people can sort of see where things stand. But go ahead.
Well, yes, but it's a mix of things. It's not just that there's not sovereignty in the offing and they're looking at other parties. It's also, as in New Brunswick, that there are more parties on the ballot. And take Quebec federally. It used to be a place that was a two-party place. The Conservatives and the Liberals, and then the Bloc Québécois came along, and now the NDP is also a party to reckon with. That's happening provincially too. And from what we see in this election, at least, and I suspect it plays out in other provinces where the Greens have done well, is that the millennials, who are becoming the larger cohort of the electorate, for some reason have figured out, possibly better than we did, that to make a National Assembly or a Parliament work, you need a diversity of voices, that you don't need to vote to win. You can vote to just have different voices or a voice you like in that legislature. And the result is a more fragmented electorate and results that are unpredictable. Andrew didn't mention that, but in the case of New Brunswick, the Liberals did win quite a bit more votes than the Conservatives.
Yeah, and the popular
so
vote,
but that's an added twist, that you've got a party that's got a lot more votes that came second in terms of seats. So when it comes to claiming legitimacy, both of them have a claim.
So how do you think that will play out in the election on Monday then, Althea, from watching from here? How will that, I mean, don't predict the election, but how do you think those elements how do you think those issues will factor into the result?
I think a lot of the voters in Quebec are basically voting for change. And so when they're looking at the offering, they have more options to look at. And what we've seen nationally and in other provincial legislatures is that even if you're a small party, you can have a difference. And sometimes your voice carries more weight. Like you think of an Elizabeth May in the House of Commons, for example. She has quite a bit of weight, and she's just one lone person. Then let's say a Liberal backbencher who may not always agree with the government and decides at times to keep their mouth shut. So yes, the millennials, and I am one of them, sometimes think, maybe having more choice is not a bad thing, and maybe cooperation is a good thing. And so I don't think we're allergic to giving parties the chance to work together. I think that's basically the lesson in New Brunswick, and that's probably going to be a lesson in Quebec on Monday as well.
Okay, so then what is the lesson for federal parties watching this? I mean, I imagine like an Elizabeth May, a Maxime Bernier, these people who are offering very specific, little things maybe, or big things, but you know what I mean, small parties parties might actually take some comfort in what they're seeing. Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting a glimpse of the near future. There are already 7 parties represented now in the House of Commons, if you include Maxime Bernier's People's Party and Aaron Weir's revived CCF. Yeah. But certainly we've had...
That's generous of you.
Certainly we've had 5.
Right.
And yeah, to take up that point, people are less moored to the old 2-party or even 3-party system. You are seeing the Greens coming on. You're seeing the NDP doing well in Atlantic Canada in recent years, which they never did before. You're seeing new parties like the People's Party, like the People's Alliance in New Brunswick. And we need a system that can accommodate that, can make that work for people so that we don't sit there waiting on election night for the accidents of the split votes. And that's part of what makes the Quebec election so unpredictable is you've got 4-party splits. So even if the polls are right, we don't really have any clear idea of what that's going to mean in terms of the seat count. So we've got a system now that's ill-suited to the politics that we're now into.
Let's agree on one thing, though. If one of those parties in Quebec, it's nice to have choices, but the problem you have at this juncture with 4 days to go is a lot of voters saying, I don't really like any of the choices. None of the parties has managed to say, I'm it, or give voters reason to say, this is who we want. So, and that explains why the results might be as split as they will be. If you had to sum up what Quebecers would like, it remains a minority government. They want to try something out with a chance to bring it back for a refund quickly if they don't like it. And that tells you that nobody here in this province has run a very exciting, inspiring campaign, to tell you the truth.
Okay, last word on this to Althea, then I'm going to do a quick round on another topic.
I was going to say, it sounds like my shopping habits, of course. Buy some things you like and if you can bring it back. I think that, you know, when you look back at what the Prime Minister said last year or 2 years ago, when he reneged on his promise on electoral reform, he said that, you know, PR was going to be big and scary, and it was going to give an electoral map full of fringe candidates, and it was better to have big tent parties that brought those voices in them. And what we're seeing is that the public is comfortable having a pizza parliament. And while it's true that on Monday there may not be a clear winner, and it might mean that the rest of us are all learning a lot about how parliamentary and Westminster government works and Parliament works and what the norms are and constitutional practices, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's really important for our political leaders to be accurate and clear with the electorate about how things are actually supposed to happen. And so, for example, in New Brunswick, I don't know that it's really helpful for the PC leader to come out and say, well, the Liberal leader does not have a mandate, because that's not actually how the system is supposed to play out. So let's all be gripped to the edge of our seats and see how our political leaders make deals.
It does show voters are maybe getting more sophisticated, too, I wonder, in terms of how this works. Okay, I want to just put you on pause because I want to do one go-round on Donald Trump in terms of what he said about Canada's NAFTA negotiating tactics yesterday during that epic press conference. Here's a reminder of what he said.
Frankly, we're thinking about just taxing cars coming in from Canada. That's the mother lode. That's the big one. We're very unhappy with the negotiations and the negotiating style of Canada. We don't like their representative very much.
Okay, one go-round on that, because it was, I guess it is part of how he negotiates as we come up to this deadline that Chantal doesn't like me to call deadline, but the thing that's happening on Sunday that everyone's calling a deadline. Does what he did there yesterday change anything for Canadians in terms of their hopes about getting a deal here? We'll start with you, Chantal.
Well, one, if the hope was to have some Canadian pressure, political at least, put on Trudeau, that didn't happen. I would argue that a few more news conferences like that, and Justin Trudeau will want to call an election on it, because every time that happens, over that press conference, which was surreal, more people are going to be looking at Donald Trump and saying, well, if we can't get a deal with this guy, it's not our guy's fault.
Right. Andrew?
Yeah, when you personalize it that way, you're not going to make yards, certainly in Canadian public opinion. Whether that was his intent or not, I doubt. But look, lots of people in Canada find this government annoying. But when Donald Trump says it, I think people tend to take the side of the Canadian government rather than Trump. I don't think this is going to have much impact. I don't even know if he had any strategic intent or if he was just riffing, which most of that press conference it looked like.
It was a little stream of consciousness. Althea.
Yeah, I think his intent was basically to stare the Canadian government into saying, you know, I'm ready to impose auto tariffs, and it ended up just being like, yeah, of course we're tough negotiators. That's how we're supposed to be. But I think what also happened yesterday was that we saw David McNaught in the U.S., our ambassador to the United States, come out and say very clearly, I think, what's at stake at the moment and why Canada isn't really budging. This idea that we would sign an agreement but still allow the President of the United States to be able to claim a national security loophole and impose tariffs on us, that can't happen if we sign a deal on NAFTA. So I think a lot of people on all sides of the political spectrum will be back in the government on that one.
Yeah, which I think is the Conservatives' worst nightmare, which is what Chantal's point was, that this is going to be an election where it's Trump versus Trudeau, and then what happens?
Okay. Easy to imagine.
Yes. All right. We're going to leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast edition, for extra content. This week, we're going to talk about how the Conservatives, the official opposition, are using crime as a wedge issue. Go to iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/The National.
Meanwhile, still lots more to come on The National, including a raucous day outside a London courthouse as hundreds of people rallied in support of Tommy Robinson.
Tommy speaks the truth.
About what?
About, I think you know what about. Islam, Sharia law.
This is a far-right, anti-Muslim activist with a history of violence and criminality who was sent to prison for breaking the law.
And tomorrow night on The National, it's been a week since the Ottawa-Gatineau area was hit by 6 powerful tornadoes. We'll show you how people are dealing with the damage left behind and the cleanup ahead.
25 mature, 150-year-old pine trees gone in 10 seconds. Very violent. You okay?
So this is the main damaged room where the tree came in.
Holy.
I have my amazing kids and my husband and friends. That's what always makes me emotional.
Tonight on The National, a new coroner's report in BC looking at almost 900 drug overdose deaths last year and the year before. It found most of those happened not out on the street, but while people were alone at home. And a vast majority of the victims, 81% of them, were male. According to the chief coroner, drug overdoses are still causing more than 3 deaths a day in BC.
At the time he made these statements, Musk had not secured funding for the proposed transaction.
That's the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, announcing today it's suing Elon Musk. The lawsuit centers on a series of his tweets where he claimed to have secured funding to take Tesla private. But the SEC says he was lying, accusing him of securities fraud. Musk, however, called the action unjustified. And we are keeping an eye tonight on a powerful, slow-moving typhoon heading towards Japan. Right now, it's tracking across the Pacific towards the country's southwestern islands. Forecasters say it'll likely hit in the next day or so, and when it does, people have been warned to expect destructive winds and heavy rain. Well, it was a chaotic scene outside a London courthouse today as hundreds of supporters and counter-protesters greeted the man known as Tommy Robinson. The 35-year-old appeared before a judge on one count of contempt of court related to an incident in May. Now, his name may not be familiar to most Canadians, but Robinson has garnered a global audience online, presenting himself as a free speech activist, but considered by many as an anti-Islam agitator. Thomas Dagla has more on his controversial views and the following he's built.
His name rallies those with like-minded views, an army so passionate about his cause, they show up outside the courthouse when he's inside.
Tommy speaks the truth.
About what?
About, I think you know what about. Islam, Sharia law.
Tommy Robinson fancies himself an activist and journalist known for provocative statements like this.
We don't have to stop radical Muslims, we have to stop Islam.
I've caused a breach of peace, I'm being arrested.
A Facebook live stream ultimately got him arrested, reporting in his own way outside a trial covered by a publication ban. Authorities considered it contempt of court. But that's just part of the story.
This is a far-right, anti-Muslim activist with a history of violence and criminality who was sent to prison for breaking the law.
We don't want any more mosques in this country.
Just look at how Robinson first became known a decade ago, by leading chaotic rallies with the so-called English Defence League, a group promoting British values over what it considered creeping Sharia law.
Look around you. Feel your strength.
Among his followers back then was Ivan Humble. He now rejects the group known as EDL, but keeps the tattoo as a reminder of just how enthralled he became.
There's nobody listening to me, and I found a voice in the English Defence League. If you self-brainwash yourself unconsciously, you don't really realise. Because you're reading the same stuff, you just don't really realise that it's affecting you in your head. It's quite sad, but then...
It's the first time he returns to Luton Town Hall since the group was banned here in the heart of Robinson's hometown. In his old stomping grounds, Robinson channeled fears of Islam as a supposed threat to local culture. Then turning to social media, Robinson gained an overseas audience and a big boost from Canada.
What he says is clear and philosophical and liberal.
Like-minded firebrand Ezra Levant offered Robinson a platform on his alternative network, Rebel Media.
Who are you here? Who are you?
Racking up millions of views with stunts like this.
You're scum. You're defending child rapists.
Antagonizing the accused and their families outside rape trials.
I'm here to expose people like you, all of you.
And blaming Islam as the source of the crime.
The fact that instead of talking about the individuals that perpetrate the crimes, he extrapolates that out and holds the whole of the Muslim community and the whole of Islam, all 1.6 billion, responsible.
His supporters saw his arrest as an attack on free speech. They marched in his defense, many likely unaware the demonstration was partly funded by a think tank an ocean away.
How do you spend money that goes to give air, oxygen to these comments?
So it's not about the oxygen that's giving to the comments. It's about his right to say it. It's important for an American organization to stand up for an individual talking about the threat of Islamism in his community, because what's going on there could also and is also occurring here in the United States.
Released from prison on August 1st, Robinson gave few interviews.
All the mainstream media do is lie.
But a primetime spot on Fox News confirmed his audience had reached global proportions.
The minute you mention criticize Islam, you are deemed and attacked by everybody.
As his retrial got underway today and the threat of prison time looms, his supporters showed they'll have his back. And when he speaks his mind, they'll listen. Thomas Dagler, CBC News, London.
Our moment of the day is next. We will hear from people who tuned in to the 4 Kavanaugh hearings today. Some were in class, at the doctor's office, or even mid-flight.
For me personally, it's been very hard to watch. Very difficult to see someone struggle with what is very clearly a traumatic experience.
Hi. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah, I'm all right.
Americans often get caught up watching Washington's many dramas, and in the Trump era, there's a lot of them. But even by that standard, today was a remarkable day, one that seemed to have everyone really transfixed. Some viewed Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation hearing as a tone-deaf response to the bigger issue of sexual misconduct. Others saw it as proof of extreme left-wing manipulation. Regardless, few Americans missed it. Where, how, and why they watched it is tonight's moment.
I watched the hearings today, not in Minneapolis, though. Actually, I was at 37,000 feet. I saw the first hearing on my Hawaii to Seattle flight and my second hearing from Seattle to Minneapolis.
I think the world is watching, our kids are watching, girls and boys.
I watched it on my iPad in the car. I watched it on my phone when I went into a restaurant. And when I didn't have either internet service, I listened to it on the radio all day long. Everywhere I went today, everybody was still talking about it. People inside the restaurant knew what was going on. Everybody was just watching.
I watched Dr. Ford's testimony in the waiting room of my allergy clinic, and I watched Kavanaugh's testimony in class.
It was really important that I catch the entire events of today. I feel strongly that we have a terrible sexual assault and sexual violence problem here in the United States.
I think that it's really important to watch this hearing and pay attention to this because if confirmed, Kavanaugh could impact our rights and our daily lives.
So, Rosie, I'm sure like you, I was glued to the hearings all day as well. But, I wonder if, though not a great surprise, perhaps the great disappointment may be the lack of any sort of definitive conclusion, right, or consensus out of this, politically or culturally, if we're in a different place now than we were when the day started. I don't know.
Yeah, because it really did come down to a he said, she said sort of day, and that you could decide what you believe. But I will tell you this, Time magazine is reporting that the National Sexual Assault Hotline in the United States saw a spike of 147% in calls on Thursday. So if it just gets people talking about the issue, maybe that has moved the dial and moved things a little bit in that direction. Okay, that's the National for September 27th. Good night.
Good night.